evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of CMM Talk Show, Conspiracies, Monsters, and More. I'm one of your hosts. I'm James.
I'm Beer.
I'm Big Duke 6.
And I'm your boy Breezy.
All right. And for those of you who don't know, James here is also Kegs from the previous podcast we did, since we're just going to use all of our names in general. Just for a little FYI for everyone, we found out that you guys could not search for us. So we decided we're going to take both of our YouTube pages, since we did have two, and we're going to combine them into our original one, which you can search, so you can all enjoy our content much easier. We're going to try and do a little name shakeup. We'll let you know when that happens, if we can, because YouTube is kind of giving us two middle fingers, but we are working on it. But from now on, everything will be running through the MAG channel under Cool-Kegs Productions, and there will be a tab for all of you looking for CMM. It will have its own playlist, nice and organized by our wonderful computer specialist, Mr. Dean, Mr. Breezy. And with that being said, before we get started tonight, everyone please do us a huge favor. Give us a like, hit that subscribe button, and bang on that noti bell so you get notified every time we drop anything, anything new in this conglomerate page. And with that, tonight, our subject, Mr. Duke, our resident historian, is going to fill us in. Mr. Duke.
Well, non nobis domine, non nobis sed nomine to da gloriam. Not for us, my lord, not for us, but to you give all the glory. This is the motto of our subject tonight, which is the Knights Templar. A sect order of supposed poor men who started out protecting pilgrims on the way to the Holy Land, because there was a lot of, thieves and bandits that were just, you could pass somebody dead on the side of the trail and you couldn't stop and bury them because you would be digging your own grave, basically. So the Knights Templar started to protect these pilgrims on pilgrimage. During the 1100s, they started in 1119 under, I want to say Hugh de Payens was the knight's name, who started the Knights Templar. And that was during, I think, Baldwin II's rule in Jerusalem.
Wow.
And, they, Knights Templar, back then, they were the special forces of the Crusades, movie stars. They were a legend then as they are now. As a matter of fact, I don't know if y'all knew this, but they had a very big advocate, and that was Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. And in 1135, in his De Laude Novae Military, which is the praise of the new kingdom, he wrote, "A Templar knight is truly a fearless knight, and secure on every side, for his soul is protected by the armor of faith, just as his body is protected by the armor of steel. He is thus doubly armed, and need fear neither demons nor men." And so what do y'all have anything on the Templars, or y'all?
Well, that's pretty deep right there. Like, unpack that.
Yeah, no, I was about to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think that means, actually, I guess, in modern times? Like, if you were to unpack that, what do you think that means?
What's that?
Basically, the armor of society versus, being, unprotected on all sides.
Oh, well, I mean, in my opinion, it's basically they had a license to kill. In my opinion, they were fighting a holy war, and supposedly, both sides thought they were in the right. There was some, it's just, to me, it's wild how the Knights Templar have transitioned into modern times. You know, there's conspiracy theories and yada yada, but you know, they were just as big back then as they are now, if, you know, actually bigger. And you know, most orders or whatever go through life and they're not recognized at the time, but then later on, posthumously, they're recognized. But the Knights Templar were the first bankers in the world. You know, they consider them the first multinational corporation in the world. They owned like 1,000 different fortifications. They had land everywhere. They even owned the whole island of Cyprus. You know, they started issuing. They started out by, I think Pope II started asking for donations for the Templars, so they started handling that money. But then they started writing pilgrims. If you were going on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, you could give your money to the Templars, and they would give you a note of what you have, so you didn't have to carry the money with you or your gold or whatever. And when you got to Jerusalem, you got up with the Templars and give them that piece of paper, and then they gave you your money, so that you
basically the first check.
Yeah, it was basically what it was. They were the first bankers, you know, and that basically brought about their downfall, really, and that's crazy. Well, you know, only 10% of the order were actually knights. 90% of the order was to support the knights, and then to deal with the financial, the land. They were into exporting, importing goods. They had like I said, 1,000 fortifications. They had their own fleet. They had their hands in everything. And Philip, I think Philip IV of France, and somewhere around 1190s. No, I think 1290s. My bad. Got into his head that he owed money to everybody. It was around, I think, 1290s and 1300. He owed money. French King Philip IV owed money, was in debt, and was not allowed to tax the church because the Pope forbade that. And ended up, I think, the Pope at the time was his cousin, and he ended up claiming the Templars were worshiping idols, having doing things that they weren't supposed to.
Devil worshiping.
Yeah, they were worshiping idols, having, you know, illegitimate.
Right, the idol, if I remember right, was called like Baphomet or something like that.
So yeah.
Oh. Okay, we're touching on Olympics.
It was a link between the Templars and the occult.
That was Pope Clement. Pope Clement was the second was Philip's cousin, and he was the holy the Roman. Oh heck, my brain just went out. You know what I'm trying to say. But the first Pope Innocent II was the one that introduced the Templars to basically being the bankers. And Pope Clement was during Philip IV's time and helped him, you know, condemn the Knights Templar. And what's crazy is, I think it was in 1312, at the Council of Vienne, 2 papal bulls were put out by Clement. One was the Vox Excelsio, which was it dissolved the Knights Templar, and then he put out the Ad Providam, which gave most of the assets to the Hospitallers. So, in all this effort that King Philip IV did to condemn the Templars to get their money, he didn't get the actual wealth of the Templars, which was all their land. All their land went to the Hospitallers, which was another, you know, Knights order. In the Holy Land.
Yeah, which is interesting, because then there was another order which sprang up. So I got a couple notes here that I'll touch on real quick before we get too far ahead of where I'm at with these notes. So yeah, the arrest began on Friday, October the 13th of 1307.
That's where Friday the 13th started.
Oh,
You know,
exactly, correct.
Right. Yeah.
That was my first note.
interesting.
So yes, that was a dawn raid on their Paris temple. Then in 1312, it was the order got abolished by papal decree, and in 1314 was when their last Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, was burned at the stake in Paris with three other Templars. Correct.
Now saying that, now I've got the quote from him. He was on fire, and he said, "God knows who is wrong and has sinned, and soon those that condemned us will be condemned. Those that have condemned us to death will be condemned." You know that Clement died a month later after that, and then Philip died the same year on a hunting trip.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That is.
Philip, but I didn't know about the other one. That's interesting.
Yeah, I remember hearing this. That's true.
Now there were some Knights Templar that fled to some Knights Templar that was in like Portugal and places like that. And in Portugal, King Dennis I did not arrest. He did not arrest the Knights when it was decreed to arrest them. He actually let them be, and they changed their name to the Order of Christ.
Yeah, that was also in my notes.
Oh, my bad.
No, you're good. You're good, bud. I love it. I love it.
Hey,
like I said,
check this out. You may know this, but in 2001, the Chinon parchment was found in
that was
Barbara, I think, Frale, and it was dated
something like that. Yeah.
To 20th 1308, where Pope Clement had absolved the Templars of all heresies before
1312.
1312.
Yep.
So Philip IV actually burned them at the stake for nothing because they were already
Exonerated. Yep.
They were already exonerated, and that's called a gluttonous ruler that I think a very bad ruler, in my opinion, to do something that. The Roman Catholic Church now said that it was unjust what happened, to the Templars. But the
right,
Templars,
and all of their confessions that were. Go ahead, Duke. My bad.
But the Templars at that time, they weren't the poor men anymore. You come into it as a poor man, supposedly with nothing, but mainly the most of them that were coming in were, the second sons, the kings, and, knights, and, people that donated everything they had to the Templars. So, the Templars acquired their wealth by just being who they were.
Well, I know a lot of the people would just give them their things to protect, all their family treasures, everything. And, because they trusted them, just like we would trust a bank.
Stockbroker.
Well, I mean, even in Jerusalem, right? The kings, the crown jewels were locked up. There were three people that had the key: the king, the Grand Master of the Knights Templar, and the Grand Master of the Hospitallers. Each had a key to that safe or whatever it was where the crown jewels were locked up. I mean, so that's saying a lot.
Right. Well, and then there all the confessions that were supposedly gathered from the members of the Templars were obviously extracted in those days under extreme torture. So, you'll say anything to get your limbs from being chopped off, which is ridiculous.
That was the thing, and that happened in France, nowhere else. The Inquisitors were not allowed to torture anybody outside of France. Now there was a thing that some of the ones that were arrested outside of France, they were wanting to move over to the Gascony region, I think, where it's Britain and France, so they could torture them because they would be on French soil, but they weren't allowed to. And so, the ones that weren't tortured, I don't know what you're talking about.
What I found, you brought it up briefly, and I wanted to touch on it again real quick here. The Order of the Knights of Jesus Christ was an order created by King, how do you pronounce that? Denez,
I think.
Yeah, it's for anyone who looks it up, it's a very odd spelling. So
Yeah.
If anyone knows how to pronounce it properly, please tell us in the comments, because obviously we can't.
How do you spell it?
Diniz.
Awesome.
So yeah, Diniz. So I assume it's Deniz.
There is other spellings as Deni, like Dennis.
Right. Yeah. It kind of depends on how someone wanted to use language to write it out, depending on like where, if it's being pulled from Portugal or Spain or English. So it's interesting. But yeah, and that was 1913. He created the Order of the Knights of Jesus Christ with papal permission because of the prominent role that the Templars played in establishing the Kingdom of Portugal. Now, the new knighthood, so the Order of the Knights of Jesus Christ, this new knighthood even moved into the Templars' headquarters that were at Tomar.
Yeah.
Wow.
So basically, it was the Templars that were just there under another name.
Yep.
Might as well have just been the same damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, guys,
I found that to be particularly interesting.
And that was a derivative from, I think it was called back in the 1300s, 1400s, the Order of Christ became the Order of what Jesus. They changed their name to the Order of Jesus Christ, and they had a couple different names throughout.
Yeah, I believe they changed their cross the way it looked too during those times, because they got like 3 or 4 different versions of their crosses.
Are we talking about the Latter-day Saints?
No.
Okay.
That's Mormon.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Because here's the thing, guys. Full discretion. I've actually held a paranormal conference here in Kansas City inside of a Masonic temple, the largest one in Kansas City. And they actually have a section devoted to the Knights Templar. Yet I am completely clueless to most of the history. So you guys are teaching me something right now.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's been theories that the Freemasons were formed from Knights Templar members. Actually, there's one theory that the forming of the Freemasons was some Templar knights fled to Scotland and helped Robert the Bruce at the Battle of Bannockburn. And then they became the Freemasons, and that's not 100% agreed upon. There's some Freemasons and some historians that don't agree, but there's some that do. So it's still up for debate as far as that one is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
That was an interesting one. And then there's been talk. There's always in movies. The Templar have been in all sorts of movies, from Indiana Jones to the Da Vinci Code. And they're always talking about the Holy Grail and the Knights Templar. And that's basically a fiction that started in the 12th century. Because the Knights Templar was the Knights of Solomon, from the Temple Mount. And there's a lot of mysteries, involved around the Temple Mount. And that's where all that started. And
well, they were the protectors of all the religious items.
Yeah, they were supposed to be protectors of, and they were protectors of some, but the Holy Grail, this pretty much was a written thing in the 12th century in a fictional writing, and it's just been passed through history, been brought up. You've been brought up to believe that you hear it so much that the Knights Templar were involved with the Holy Grail, but there were other things that they protected. Their main thing was protecting life. They were protecting Jerusalem. The true treasure was Jerusalem. Basically to them, and that was the main thing, and they lost their prominence when Saladin or whatever was able to take Jerusalem. Excuse me. When they fell into the hands of the Islam.
Well, I suppose. So what do we think? What do we think about the Templars now? Before we go back to ancient history, like where do the Templars lie now, in modern times?
Government.
And that That is one possibility, and a lot of people will throw that in with like the New World Order, the Illuminati, and all that. But I want to touch on the Rosicrucians.
Yeah.
Now that you bring that up, because the Rosicrucians were symbolized by the Rosy Cross, and in a lot of times it looked very similar to the Templar cross, leading many to believe that the Rosicrucians were formed via the Templars.
Well, since you mentioned that, when I was looking at the ceiling paint, because the entire ceiling inside this temple was painted, it reminded me a lot of the Rosicrucian cross, actually.
Right, and there's debate actually over who came first. Some say that the Rosicrucians were a holy order established back as far as 500 years before the Templars. Others say they weren't established till like the 1500s. Others, and so it's like it's a very strange web when you start looking at like the actual start date of the Rosicrucians, because there's nothing that agrees with each other. And there was I can't remember the name of the documentary, which I wish I could, but it showed the path of some of the Templar refugees fleeing France. Wow, try and say that together really fast. And they all ended up supposedly at a monastery, which then became the headquarters of a Rosicrucian Knights stronghold. So
no.
I don't know if I would say necessarily that the Templars created the Rosicrucians, excuse me, or rather evolved into. I think it was more that some of them were, I guess you could say, absorbed into the Rosicrucians. Now, a lot of the beliefs that happen after that, and this would depend, and this leads into a whole different, I guess you could call it a conspiracy, that was touched on actually in the movie that Duke referenced earlier, the Da Vinci Code, which is that the Holy Grail was not actually a cup. The Holy Grail was the Holy Grail was, yes, it's a chalice. If you take your hands and put them together, it's, it makes that V shape that, you have to go through and like go with symbologies and whatnot and pick apart paintings and put all of this together. But they do a great job of doing so in the movie, I might add. But the chalice that's being referred to is the womb of women, specifically of Mary Magdalene, who was actually Jesus's wife.
Wow. Okay.
Which would make the Holy Grail the bloodline of Christ, which is what a lot of people say that the Templars and the Rosicrucians and the Knights of the Order of Jesus Christ were actually protecting, was the bloodline of Christ and all of the histories and the documents that showed that was the bloodline of Christ.
Makes so much sense.
That was
compared to somebody telling you from a long time ago,
Oh, how long have y'all not been hearing me talk?
It's been about 5 minutes.
About 5 minutes, yep. About 5 minutes, buddy.
Going through all sorts of stuff. Oh, I said to my phone, it was off for some reason. I almost forgot that, you're talking about the Templars being arrested. It was November 22nd of 1307 when Pope Clement issued the Pastoralis Prae Eminente, which instructed all Christian monarchs to arrest the Templars. And, that was when it was started, basically, their whole downfall. And it reached its apex in, 1314 with the burning of Moray and the other Templars in France.
Oh, wow.
But I was saying that I considered the Templars, I consider them the first multinational organization. They dealt with land, import, export, manufacturing. They owned their own island of Cyprus. They had a fleet of ships of their own. They didn't have to answer to any monarch.
Well, you mentioned something earlier, Duke, that actually, you know, somebody as stupid as I am, ignorant really is the word to this whole subject. You mentioned that they were like the actors of their time, almost the Hollywood type.
Yeah, I mean, they were the. What gets me is they were the movie stars of their time, the bankers of their time, and they were the special forces for the crusading armies.
Well, my question is
minus
the special forces, because obviously soldiers and I, all of us, I think, have a special place. When we think of Hollywood today, so in my mind, I'm trying to translate ancient history to modern times, right? And like I said, okay. I stepped into a modern times, I guess, Knights Templar area. How do you feel that it's translated over time? Do you think it's the exact same thing? Do you think they were righteous? Do you think...
Well, y'all probably didn't hear. Did y'all hear the whole assassin King Almeric I was talking about?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. I was talking to my dead phone. Excuse me. But to prove that they were human and they were about their money was at some point King Almeric of Jerusalem, I think, was brokering a deal with the Assassins Guild, the assassin sect of the Sunni Islamic faith. I think they were in they lived in the mountains of Syria and Iran, and they were the ones that did all the assassinations around that area. And he was brokering a deal to protect the people around Jerusalem from the assassins. Well, that irritated the Templars because the guild would not mess with the Templars and were paying the Templars not to mess with them. And so that was going to cut out the money the Templars had protecting everybody that they were getting from the Assassins Guild. So, they weren't all, they were human. They had their quirks as well as, but, Hollywood and places like that have a bad way of embellishing things and blowing stuff out of proportion. And it's like one of the greatest fiction of the last 800 years is there actually being a Holy Grail protected by the Knights Templar and it being a cup. When it's probably like like Keg said, it's more like a bloodline that they were protecting, as well as anything that had to do with the Temple Mount. They were originally the Knights of Solomon, so there's all sorts of mysteries around anything that says Solomon or anything has to do with Solomon. There's always mysteries.
Oh, yeah.
And mysteries produce conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Kind of like Yoda said, this begets that, this begets that. Fear or anger leads to fear, fear leads to hatred. Hatred.
Well, and what's interesting, and suffering leads to the dark side.
Right.
So,
but hey, do y'all know anything about the assassins? We're going to do an episode on the assassins because that's they even think maybe it's always asked, is that where Assassin's Creed come from? And but there's a good history of the Assassins Guild. And there was a true Assassins Guild. And,
well, that will be an interesting episode.
But yeah.
Well, here's the deal. If that was an interesting, if people would like to hear that episode, let us know in the comments. Actually,
good call on that one. You touched on King Solomon real quick, and I do want to bring something out that maybe you guys haven't heard. So, Jesus was a member of the tribe of Judah. Mary Magdalene was a member of the tribe of Benjamin. Now, Jesus was a lineal descendant of a royal bloodline that spanned 42 generations that included King Solomon and King David.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just use the Bible, but you can piece together that Jesus of Nazareth was not only of royal descent, but he has ties back to King Solomon.
Yeah, don't let it go all the way down to the Merovingian or whatever, the Merovingian order or whatever.
I believe that's where is about where it starts. Yeah.
Ow. Oh wow.
Sorry.
You know, every
Yeah,
time we do one of these, I'd learn something. Just to be completely honest, I have no idea about most of these stories. That's awesome.
Well, okay, so there was 3 things about Jesus' life that were not established with certainty. So number 1 would be the year of his birth. The second one would be the date he began his ministry, or how long it lasted. And the third would be his age when he was crucified. Now his birth year is made uncertain because of Denis. Oh my God, I'm gonna have trouble with this name. I tried pronouncing this a bunch of times, but as I was writing it down for my notes, and it's not a fun one. Dionysius. Oh my God, Dionysus.
Dionysius.
Well, it looks like Dionysus. I don't know. Dionysus Exiguus. I'm real bad with some of these names, just so everyone knows. I apologize. But he's a Scythian monk that was the one who developed the BC for before Christ and the AC for after Christ, which technically isn't accurate anymore because we use BC and AD. Well, technically it's ADE or whatever. So before Christ, and then AD stands for Our Domini, which is the year of our Lord. So that's my extent of Latin. Yay me. But anyway, he created those in around the 5th century, and when he did, he made a calculation error in establishing Jesus' birth year, because he failed to take into account the fact that Jesus was born before Herod the Great died in 4 BC. Because when Herod ruled as king of the Jews from 27 to 4 BC, after Jesus' birth, Herod had issued an order to kill all male children in Bethlehem that were 2 years old or younger. As such, you can derive that Jesus must have been a little older than that at the time that Herod died. Yeah. Now, other records that you can expunge on, and correcting for his error, you can make an assumption. And again, I'm going to use the word assumption because this is very, very hard to pin down, and you're just piecing things together as best you can. So you can make the assumption, excuse me, that his ministry began when he was about 32 to 34 years old, and lasted anywhere from 1 to 3 years, which, depending on which book of the New Testament is correct, because none of them agree on the number of actual annual Passovers that occurred during his ministry, it's pretty much agreed on that it was 3 years. Therefore, his crucifixion occurred when he was about 35 to 38 years old.
But wasn't there like so many years missing that they had no record of him at all, that doesn't know what he was doing?
Yeah, that would be like from his young adulthood up to the point where he started his ministry.
Yeah, like 12 to... So, was he in hiding? Is that what we're getting at?
Well, and it's hard to pin down. It's hard to pin down. There's so little actual text remaining, and there's so little things that reference a Jesus of Nazareth, which is interesting.
But it kind of makes sense. I mean, what else would you be doing? You know, you'd be hiding from the Romans during that.
Well,
time.
that would make a lot of sense. Yes.
Or you've doing being human and doing human things, and having a bout with your faith, and finally coming to, or having a bout with who you were, and finally coming to terms with it.
Well, here's something that Beer and I actually had a conversation about. Because I'm a pure agnostic, and my thing is, I asked Beer the question of why is it that we don't have a historical record of Jesus, at least, making water into wine, and your answer was,
oh my gosh, I remember talking about this, but I don't remember my answer.
well in pure transparency, right? So
yeah.
I believe your answer was that wasn't the actual point. The point was the separation of blood and water.
That was me.
Oh, was that you? Okay.
Well, no, we were both talking about. I was there though, but yeah, I remember talking this. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was
they changed the water into wine. Yeah.
Right. Well, that was denoting that. Well, at least this is my interpretation of it. Through all of the crap that I've read through and whatnot, is he's changing water into wine as showing that those who come together under his ministry are not blood related, but are of one family. Because there were families that were ripped apart when he started what turned into modern day Catholicism.
Yeah.
Well, and and there's other ways that's interpreted, and Jesus is used as the peak or the pinnacle of other religions. But for modern day Catholicism, when that started, there were families that were some that stayed with the old ways, some that adopted this new thing that had just formed, and there were families, mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters that were torn apart because of this. So the changing of water into wine is symbolic of breaking those ties and creating a shared, fellowship of family underneath this new ministry.
Yeah. Well, and take religion out of it, but the fellowship that we share, guys, like just having these conversations, it's the highlight of my week. And I just want to throw it out there. We're hoping to do this weekly. Conspiracies, monsters, and more. We'll cover everything. We'll cover a gambit. But this right here is, I think, something that we all struggle with. Religion, purpose, all that combined. And it's a great conversation to have. And if anybody wants to add to it, please, again, the comments. Just throwing it out there.
And how does the story?
We should have.
How does the story of the One Ring from Lord of the Rings go? It was 9 were given to the realms of men, 7 to the dwarves. What was it? 3.
Look, nice, Grimba I can't remember. I used to know the black speech.
I know. That's why I didn't try it, because I don't remember it anymore.
Precious.
But if someone, I was gonna say, there's 4 of us. We'll have to each get one of the 4. Whoever got the 4 rings of power. I believe there was a group that got 4. Maybe it was the elves.
The elves did. The elves got 4 that were created by Killamore outside of Sauron's presence.
Correct. That way they weren't tainted.
Sauron wasn't able to control those, so Galadriel got 1, and I forget
Galadriel, Elrond.
Yeah, Elrond, and then
I forget the 3rd one, and then the last one actually ended up with Gandalf.
Yeah.
I know that one.
Well, and the Majar or the wizards are actually like divine beings.
Yeah,
so
they're
the fact that the Witch King of Angmar, kind of whooped Gandalf's ass always kind of pissed me off. But we won't go there because that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, it must have been Disney must have had a hand there.
You had the Valar, then you had what was under the Valar. They're just under the Valar, and that's what all the wizards were. Gandalf,
the Majar,
Saruman,
Celebrimbor.
Yeah, and the 2 blue elves. That were the East. You don't hear much about them. But anyway.
No, not really. Yeah, I will say the history of Middle Earth will have to wait for another episode, I guess.
Yeah, because I need to get caught up on Lord of the Rings here. It's been a while.
You were talking about Jacques de Molay and his being burned at the stake. Getting back to the Knights Templar, you know that when he was burned, he had them face him towards the Cathedral of Notre Dame, and he had his hands clasped together when he was burned. And that's when he said that saying, and then that's when Clements and Philip IV both died the same year. Yeah, he did.
Yeah, that's an insane coincidence there.
Yeah, it is. It's weird.
Really quick, before we move too far, I did want to finish off one thing that I had on the whole bloodline thing, just for people to look into more. There is named children of Jesus and Mary Magdalene.
Let's go with it. Yeah, let's go with it.
Did you guys know that or no?
I had no idea.
I've heard that.
I knew I just didn't know.
So their
I
first
saw
child.
somebody was doing they were testing some people with blood samples that supposedly could be descendants.
Which would be insane if we could actually confirm that somehow, right?
Yeah, well, supposedly they can from the shroud. They have Jesus' blood on the shroud.
That's true.
Yeah, and
that's very true.
The one I saw, it was a father and his daughter, and they did their samples, and it turned out they weren't descendants.
Here's a fun fact.
But they have it.
Here's a fun fact. I found out that on my dad's side, I'm actually descended from King James. When they did the blood thing and went all the way back.
Yeah, they can go all the way back.
Me and my wife, I think, are going to do that for Christmas. I think that's what we're going to be our Christmas gift for each other. We're going to do that.
Everybody's descended from Genghis Khan.
Yeah, like what is it? Like fucking 8% of the world.
Yeah, something like that.
I'm pretty sure.
It's crazy.
I'm pretty sure Conor McGregor's my bloodline, but.
Well, and why don't you go rob me one of his pots of gold at the end of his goddamn.
I can't do that, but I might be able to get you a bottle of the proper 12.
Perfect. I'll accept that.
All right.
Well, real quick though, the names of those children, before I forget to mention this, the first child was a girl named Sarah. She would later be known as Sarah Damaras Bat Yeshua, Princess of West France. Her father was listed as Jesus of Nazareth, and her mother was listed as Mary Magdalene. Now, they also supposedly sired a son by the name Joseph, who would later become known as Joseph Ramatheo ben Jesus, Bishop of Saraz.
Like a little brother.
Wow.
Yes.
Instead of, okay. I mean, see, that's easy. For me, that's easy to mix up even modern times, right? If somebody goes on literally a hiatus, like just disappears because they're being hunted, instead of being the son, you're actually the little brother. Like, that's easy to mix up. But the bloodline, it'd be interesting. Like, I'm so interested in the pages of the Bible that are missing. I'm so interested. I'm just saying.
Well, it's okay. You can keep on just reading the ones that are there until they show up.
But I'm going to say the points of this whole episode is certain things in history have come back to us that, like, all you Halloween or scary type people that love, Friday the 13th derived from when the Templars were originally condemned. If y'all didn't catch that part of the episode, that's a big deal.
It's spooky.
And then to this day, everybody knows what Friday the 13th is.
Yeah, so it makes it so spooky.
And, there's conspiracies of the Knights Templar became other orders. They became, some say they went over to Scotland. Some say they went to, the Portuguese side of them, became a whole new order. You've got all these different things. But the thing is how 800 years that those stories have passed down and are still relevant today in movies like The Da Vinci Code, Indiana Jones. They use the Knights Templar, and when you see a Knights Templar, the true Knights, there was only 10% of the Knights Templar were actual Knights. You had the, and as far as the Knights go, you had the top order, which wore white with the red cross, and then you had the sergeants under them, which wore black with the red cross. And then you had all their support people. And
well, I seen all those robes actually, but the ceiling was white with the red cross. To be clear, at least I said I've seen all those robes when I was in the Masonic Temple. What I will say is the ceiling was white with the red cross.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, 100%. But that's here in Kansas City.
Pictures?
I don't. You know what? Maybe. Let me look. Maybe.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool to put up on this.
I mean, it was the entire thing. They were completely accessible. They let us go anywhere and ask any question. But the main purpose was the paranormal conference, which was, looking back at it, I wish I would have taken more time to kind of explore, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if the Freemasons came from the Knights Templar or not, the Freemasons did adopt a few things or carry on in ways similar to the Knights Templar in certain things. You know, they have the same devotion and multinational, things of that nature. And so, and really, seem to do good for humanity, say like the Knights Templar tried to be, in my opinion.
Well, since we're, right around that time, where do each of us land on the Knights Templar of today, modern society?
Real fast, though, before we answer that, there is a crumb that none of us have touched on yet that I almost forgot in my notes.
My elf ears just went up.
And that was part of the origin story of the Knights Templar. And this has been said to be a hoax that was created sometime, excuse me, sometime in the 1950s. Believe it or not, that early in history. But
man, that's
the
70 plus years ago now. Wow.
It's the Priory of Sion.
Ooh.
And this goes back to the bloodline side of it, and I know that's more of the, everyone's like, oh, would you shut up with that already? But the theory on that is that the Priory of Sion is what actually created the Knights to be a militant defense of the bloodline. So there's that for everyone who is going to scream in our comment section about, you guys forgot something.
Mm-hmm.
There's the last breadcrumb. Now, please reiterate your question for all of us to go ahead and run through.
Well, yeah, but Zion is a very
Sion.
A Sion?
Yes, Priory of Sion.
How do you spell it?
S-C-I-O-N.
Okay, I'm gonna go look into that because that's how ignorant I am to this conversation. That's unfortunate.
Well, in my personal belief, I'm not saying that they weren't that at some point, but I still believe that they were created to, protect pilgrims. That was their original creation was pilgrims. You got to understand that this was like way worse than the Wild West. You could be walking along the path headed to Jerusalem and somebody cut your throat and take your girls, your daughters, your sons, all your money and everything you had and leave you right on the side of the road. And people would not bury you because if they stopped, they knew that they would have to dig their own grave. And, that was, and the night, I believe that's how the Knights Templar really started. Now, they would bloom into everything else, because they were started basically from the Temple Mount. They were the Knights of Solomon, so there's always that mystery behind them that always is with Solomon. And, they still carry their air of mystery. But it's just still amazes me how they have went up through 800 years and still talked about, and many people have heard Knights Templar somewhere, be it in a movie, in a book, on History Channel, on our podcast, whatever.
Well, again, this is why I asked the question where you guys truly feel the Templars land in modern society, and it's basically because if that's still being propagated in Hollywood today, that makes me nervous. So let me ask the question again.
Well, here. I want. Let me. My bad. I'm sorry.
No worries.
This just popped up in my brain.
No worries.
As far as what Keggs was saying, I'm sorry.
You're all good.
What you're saying about the whole bloodline. Now, King Philip IV went after the Templars so hard. It might be, it couldn't have been just about money. I mean, you're going after a society.
It's about power, I think.
That, you know,
they got powerful.
Well, it's weird how he knew how to bring them down so quickly. When Saladin tried and couldn't do it, Saladin just tried to, you know, caught like 50 of them and cut their heads off, and that didn't work. But Philip IV figured out how to hit them in their, you know, in their religious side of it, and their, you know, condemning them. But there had to be, it always makes you think there was something else other than just money. Mm-hmm. And it could be wanting to know the, they knew something that he wanted to know, and he was trying to find out that little bit of information. You know, it's a thought. I don't know. Well, but anyway,
my thing is, you know, if they were the Hollywood of their time, plus of course, which there's many CIA agents inside of Hollywood. We know this. It's documented. How do you guys equate the Templars of the past to the Templars of modern day? Are they...
I really don't understand the question. I mean, I know they're relevant. I know you can see their mark on different societies.
Are they good or are they
evil? Everywhere.
Are they good or are they evil? Are they a positive force?
No, they're not evil. I don't think they're evil.
They don't think they're evil.
Not evil. People say the Freemasons are evil. The few Freemasons I know are not evil. I mean, that's a load of rubbish in my book.
Okay.
That's just my opinion, but
sure.
I've never seen no grand evil from these people. You know, they seem to do good. I mean, they try to help people from what I see, and you know.
Well, they have several tenets to follow just to be accepted. So I know about Masons, but what about you, Beer? What do you think about the Templars and modern society?
I'm totally opposite of Duke there. I think they are evil, and I think the majority of them are in our government, and not just our government. They're part of the governments all around the world now, and they have Masonic churches all through our towns and cities. And I just saw one the other day down the street. It was right behind a church, an old 1800s church. Was a Mason place to go, wherever you call them. But
Masonic Lodge.
Masonic Lodge. Yeah, it was right behind an old church. And God, I wonder if they even know it's there or realize what it is. I mean, so yeah, I'm completely opposite of Duke there.
Well, no,
it's just from my experience of studying the Freemasons, of the interaction with them. There's evil in the world, and to me, evil is going to try and hide itself behind something, and I consider
like a masonry temple.
People out here that are trying to bring about, you know, Satan, or you've got your followers of what's his name, trying to bring about Cthulhu and all of that. Those people to me are evil.
Yeah, sure. Well, what about you, Kate? Yeah. Or James? Like, what do you really think? Like, as far as if there is a translation, I mean, there could have been a switch. I mean, we've known this to happen within, you know, humans in general, politics, whatever. What do you think about the Templars of today versus the Templars, and you know?
Well, I'll preface this by saying if there was ever such thing as the Priory of Sion, and they did create the Templars for the purpose that they did, that is stated, I find it interesting that the papacy would basically give them a decree to follow only the rules laid down to them by Rome and elevate them to such a status if they are actually an organization that is aimed at the exact opposite. If that's the case, that was the best covert operation ever done in the history of mankind.
Well, let me say this.
To basically hide, you know what I mean?
Yes, yes. That's
right under their noses the
well,
entire time, and they're, you know.
Well, what I'm going to say is this. I look at some of this stuff, especially the Templars. You know, again, I don't know these stories, but I kind of feel. I hate to use the word feel. I kind of equate it to this: a modern day CIA. I think that they think they're right. I think that they can do good. But I think that ultimately it's about the flow of information.
Well, and anyone feels that they're right.
You've got to pick your lesser of two evils, basically.
No, that's 100% true. The modern day CIA is how I equate all this to.
Consider evil. You know, my equation of actual evil is, say, Adolf Hitler giving this speech about his Mein Kampf, whatever, and condemning millions of Jews. That's pretty messed up in my book. That's
absolutely.
Well, and here's the other portion of that you have to look at. Everyone in the history of mankind who has perpetrated heinous acts, including Hitler, including Stalin, including all of these people we can list off through the ages, Genghis Khan, Vlad the Impaler, they all felt that they were right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you can't. I mean, I feel like using the word evil. I mean, yes, you can say that Hitler was evil.
Absolutely.
But I feel like it's such a washed out term.
It really is.
And to finish answering your question,
Breezy. What you're saying about that is, yeah, to me Hitler is evil because he did that to people that weren't at war with him originally. You know, he was like genocide. Of course, say like Vlad the Impaler. Yeah, he had a bunch of Ottomans up on impaled, and he was eating supper and amongst them. But that was a scare tactic to scare the Ottoman army back to their side of the pond, basically. You know. And
but again, you can make the argument that it's what's the word I want? It's
in his perspective, he was right.
Well, yeah, he was evil to the Ottomans, but to his people, he was a savior.
He was God. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So is it the bringer or the destroyer?
I think it's all about perspective, right?
Well, right. But like Duke said, what made, or maybe it was Beer, I can't remember who said this one, but what made King Philip so dead set to take down the Templars all of a sudden?
Yeah, that was
which is interesting.
Well, I think they got too much power and they didn't like it.
That was papal power, so all that was doing was increasing the power of the church. Which, that was, you know, well, that was fine.
I'll share this online.
We were just talking about the Templars and how powerful they were. They had their own fleet. They had bases all over the world, pretty much.
Well, if you want to take that into today's world, I mean, look at all.
Well, it is definitely.
Look at some of these mercenary groups like Blackwater and some others that became massively large after the 9/11 and the 20-year campaign we just did in Iraq.
Well,
Blackwater exploded. They have their own aircraft.
Air
They
Force.
have their own ships.
Yeah, Air Force. Yeah. Well, the U.S. Embassy alone. Look at the embassies.
East India Company back in.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, the East India Trading Company.
Yep, absolutely. But
you can find all of these different. I guess we'll call them corporations throughout the ages. And to some people they were saviors. To some people they were destroyers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at the privateers. They were working for the East India Trading Company with letters of pardon and declarations of propriety and all of that stuff, and they got turned on. That's how piracy started, was the privateers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's not really about Hollywood.
Were the pirates evil, or were they saviors?
Depends on the culture and perspective. I think this whole episode is about perspective, but we're right at that time, guys. So this is what I'm going to do. Final thoughts? Beer? What's your final thoughts on the subject?
No, I don't really have a final thought, but
final words.
No. But no, it was a very interesting subject. I wish I would have known more.
Well,
Duke did a great job.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. It's great having you come aboard. But what about you, Mr. Kegs? Final thoughts about the subject?
I feel like this is going to be a subject which can draw as much controversy and conspiracies as one person is willing to dig into.
Yeah.
Or any person is willing to dig into, because there's so much information, and some of it, and actually a vast majority of it in my research clashes. You know, and it's interesting for those who want to follow hard fact, for those who have certain, dead set, deep-rooted beliefs, whether it be spiritual or otherwise, and to have that kind of a verbiage and a logos that surrounds just surrounding that one subject, that you can branch off into so many different, connected little web, like a little web of intricate tales. I always find that kind of a subject interesting, and it's always going to bring interesting conversation, and
that's what the podcast is designed to do, right? So,
well, that is the hope,
yeah.
But yeah, that's what I gotta say. That's my, I guess, my closing statement.
Well,
Yeah.
before I ask Duke, before I ask you, go ahead, Beer.
No, I was just gonna say, I said a lot more than I thought I would. So there you go.
Well,
No, it's more fun.
My final thoughts are: Civis pacem parabellum. If you want peace, prepare for war.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, and guys, so this is more for the listener than the guys here. This entire reason why we do the podcast, the entire reason, is to basically facilitate conversation. I came into this completely unprepared for various reasons, but every time I do that, I learn something. Sometimes you don't have to think you know what you know, I guess, and that I didn't need to research to learn something. If I feel like if I researched it, I feel like I would have felt like I knew something, if that makes sense.
Right.
So, I guess to end this before Kegs actually ends this, I would say sometimes an open mind requires a quiet mind and a shut mouth. So, I guess with that being said.
With that being said, everyone, this has been another episode of the CMM Talk Show, or Conspiracies, Monsters, and More. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and noti bell for us. Helps us out tremendously. Tell us what you thought in the comments below, and if anyone else has any other theories, please drop those in the comments as well. Also, do us a favor, because this episode, we didn't have anything new in our email. Send us your emails. We have that listed in the description.
CMM
I'm sure
Talk.
our wonderful editor will flash that up on the screen for everyone right about now. And you can send us emails for us to talk about live on air. So, we'll see you guys next time.